And I'm kind of a Pharisee coming to do with time, so I like to start on time. So that's our deal. I'm Jan Doherty. I had the privilege of being deacon here for 13 years. Some of you remember that. And it's really a privilege for me to be here this morning. I'm part of just a wonderful group called the Spiritual Life Committee. And you might say, what's that? Which is what we say too. But we're called together to pay attention to the spiritual life of Saint Markans. And we do that, we take that seriously. We pray for you, for the community, for the dean. And we're also, a little plug, the folks behind the midweek meditation. So if you get that and enjoy that, encourage other people to get it too. We're happy with that. It means a lot to us. So I'm just going to ask our members to stand. There is Keith Davis, Thelma McKenzie's not able to be here, Heidi Eels, Mary Lusk, Carol Barnes, Dwayne Currington, Susan Travis, and myself. You can stand up here. Okay, so I'm sure you know many of them. So in July, I was sitting at home really in despair. What to do? There's so much division, there's so much darkness on so many levels. And I thought, this is a time for a spiritual life committee to come together. And so we did. And we talked, we prayed, we listened, and we came up with this. This was kind of led by another member from St. Mark's who had sent an email sharing her experiences and encouraging us to be bold and to have conversations with people that we maybe disagree with or don't know. It's a time to listen and to talk. And so we're going to ask you to do that same thing today. To come together to listen with the ear of your heart. Listen with the ear of your heart. We have 3 people who are speaking today, and these people are brave. They are brave. One person has, our lieutenant, has never even been to St. Mark's before. I'm thinking he might come back. And as you know, Jen has been a member for a long time, and Keith's an ex officio member because he really belongs to St. John's, but he comes here on Wednesdays and he's part of our committee. So for sure, they're all Saint Markans. So our plan is they're each going to talk about 4 minutes, telling a little bit of their story. You're going to listen with the ear of your heart. These are bold people to be doing this. Then I will call us together just to give a little brief suggestion for our own conversations around our table. And it will be done at 10:15. Now I'll have a closing prayer. There won't be a time for a big back and forth, this is what I heard, this is what I didn't hear, blah, blah, blah. We're not doing that, okay? This is really more personal and holy. So, we are going to begin with our first speaker, and that is my friend and your friend, Keith Davis.
Thank you, Jan, and good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So it's kind of difficult to condense 56 years into 4 minutes. So I'll just paint a thumbnail, give you a thumbnail sketch. Again, my name is Keith Davis, and I was born and raised in Gary, Indiana. I came to Minnesota in 1979 via the University of Minnesota, where I majored in electrical engineering.
Go Gophers.
We hope. And as with many college students, you receive advice from your parents and elders. Things like be a good boy, study hard, have money for the payphone in case of an emergency, wear clean underwear, all those kinds of things. But additionally, my elders and parents gave me this kind of advice. When not if, but when you are stopped by the police. Turn your radio off, hands on the steering wheel, direct eye contact, no movement without permission and please, and yes ma'am, no sir. Remember, you can't do everything that your white counterparts can do. If you date other than black women, careful where you visit and when. Stay in the city and don't go to anywhere rural. Don't go to anyone's house that you don't know. Please don't go by yourself. And no means heck no. Keep a low profile. Now, I thought my parents were kidding. I said, oh, mother, dad, these are the almost 1980s, not the 50s or 60s. I'm going to the land of liberal thinking and of Hubert Humphrey. And then the indignities began. Can I touch your hair? Is it cut like sheep's wool? You're not an athlete? Oh, you know, the only reason you received that academic scholarship was because of affirmative action, among other things. And then later on in my professional life, I was chastised for not going into the South at night and renting a car for a project. The South, me, rental car, not gonna do it. I was chastised, penalized for that, until I took it up with upper management. The specter of racism has permeated every aspect of my life each and every day. What I wear, when, where I wear it, how I behave, not being too animated or boisterous, how I speak. I always get the compliment that really isn't one. He speaks so well. He's so well spoken. And these are the first things that you hear with Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Colin Powell, Neil deGrasse Tyson. But you never hear those things with Bill and Hillary Clinton, Rachel Maddow, Joe Scarborough, and others. I always wonder, what was the expectation? I also had to be careful about where, when, and with whom I go somewhere. When I was younger, what I ate in public. I never ate fried chicken and watermelon in public. Seriously, I love them both. Even where I go to church. For as Martin Luther King said in 1960 on Meet the Press, it is appalling that the most segregated hour of Christian America is 11 a.m. on Sunday morning. Other things like never be late and to be over-informed and over-educated and over-trained, because there's the belief blacks have to work twice as hard for half as much. Every day, I'm going on time today.
1 minute.
Okay. Every day, successful black Americans must use or employ a kind of cultural jujitsu, or as W.E.B. Du Bois so eloquently described in his 1903 book, The Soul of Black Folks, double consciousness. That is, one ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body, whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. So how do we combat racism? Not really sure, but I think St. Patrick of Assisi kind of gave us a blueprint. Start by doing what is necessary, then what is possible. Suddenly, you're doing the impossible. We have to keep things like this going, sustained conversation and dialogue, and supply the actions to support the desired outcomes. We have to learn from our failures and build on our successes. It's going to be hard work, and it will require prayer, diligence, risk, trust, and compassion from all affected parties. How do we do it? I like Tennessee women's basketball coach, the late Tennessee women's basketball coach, Pat Summitt. When asked how she dealt with her Alzheimer's, I liked her saying, right foot, left foot, breathe, repeat.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, let's state the obvious. I'm the law enforcement official that's here. And I want to thank you for having me here. I don't have anything scripted to say today. Keith, a longtime family friend of mine, invited me today to come speak. My name is Roger New. I am a police officer with Eagan Police Department. I've been working for the police department for 22 years. And in that time, I've held just about every rank. I started off as a community service officer, got hired as a police officer in the fall of 1994. That's right, I've been a police officer for 22 years. I worked as a detective, got promoted to sergeant. My current rank is lieutenant, and I will assume the title of deputy chief here in November of this year. Sorry. I'm getting the cue, raise the mic. I mentioned a little bit about my background because I am unique in law enforcement. You may not be aware, but there are currently 2 African-American police chiefs in the state of Minnesota. One's a chief in St. Cloud, and the other chief is the Minnesota Transit Police. And there was a third, John Smith, who retired from St. Paul Police Department. I am considered number 2 in my department. I only report to the chief of police, and when he's out of the building, I am the chief of police come November. There's only a handful of people that, African-American people, that hold this rank in the state of Minnesota, and the Midwest for that matter. And I constantly tell a story to people. It's very challenging when you go to a state conference and you walk in the room and you are one of very few, if not the only person of color in the room. And, you know, thinking back on my 22 years in law enforcement, I think to myself, and I share with younger people all the time, there is a blueprint to success, and people don't realize it. But there is truly a blueprint to success, and that blueprint requires 2 40-hour jobs. One 40-hour job when you go to work each day is the daily tasks that you're given by your bosses, and the job that you have to do. The other 40-hour job that you have a week is making the people that you work with feel comfortable. Because I truly believe that I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it didn't take me interacting with people that I work with. I've got friends that are in law enforcement that haven't had the success, and that's because they don't interact with people, they're not involved in communities and whatnot. And it's not because I'm a bad person or they're bad people, it's just what they choose to do, and it requires you extending yourself. One of the things in law enforcement right now, and I feel it's important to talk about, I heard Jan touch on it a little bit, is the state of law enforcement. Right now, we're taking we have bullseye on our back, and I gotta tell you, while I am a minority in law enforcement, there's very few people in leadership. I support what our profession does. There are a lot of good men and women that do this job on a day-to-day basis. And Jan touched on one thing when she opened up. I think what needs to happen is there needs to be open dialogue. And this is, when Keith shared with me, this is what the plan is for this event, I thought this is excellent. I got to be part of this because there needs to be open dialogue. Are we going to get it right all the time? No. Do we get it right a lot of the time? Yeah. But the problem is people don't know what our rules are and what our guidelines are for law enforcement. I'm going longer. I got the mic. But people don't understand what it is what the rules are in law enforcement. I can think back to my ailing grandmother, and I had 2 priests coming in about a year ago as she sat in the hospital ill, and they wanted to open up, and they knew I was a police officer. They wanted to talk to me about Ferguson. And they said, it's wrong that cops are going out killing black people. And one of the things the way I framed it to them is this. Do you understand that if you grab a police officer's gun, it becomes a deadly force situation? And they said, what do you mean? Why don't you just shoot him in the arm? I said, read Minnesota State Statute 609.666. It doesn't say injured force. It says deadly force. That's what which means there's a high likelihood if we shoot our gun, there's a high likelihood that someone may die. Do we go to work thinking that someone with the intent that someone's going to be shot or killed? No, that's not our intent. We go to medicals, we deliver babies, we save people from homes. We do more of that than we do get involved in deadly force situations. We do. But the reality is the negative, the worst possible part of our job is what's highlighted in the media right now. And I know Mr. Castillo that was sorry to say, I slipped the Thank you. Mr. Castillo that was murdered or killed in Falcon Heights. Well, that video itself is, on the face of it, very, very horrible. What I would say to everyone is, don't rush to judgment. Wait until the investigation is complete. See what comes from that investigation and listen to what the investigation states. We saw that in the Jamar Clark case. There was an investigation that took place. They laid out all the video, they played everything, and one of the key things that you heard was they grabbed that officer's gun. You grab an officer's gun, that's the worst possible thing that you can do. There's always, the way we work and the environment we work within is, there's always a gun at every call we're at. It's our gun. And guns have been taken from a police officer and used against those police officers. And most times people, if they grab a police officer's gun, it's not to see what model gun it is. It's not. And it's to use it against that officer. If there's parts about the way we do our job that you don't like, one of the things you heard the president say was, get on committees. Every year in January, the state legislature opens up there. You have a state representative. Talk to that representative about drafting new bills. Work with the police departments of the mayors, the city managers about establishing new policies that the police departments have to work under. We follow a guideline, and that guideline is Minnesota State statute. And if you want to see change, that's how you affect change. So, she's getting down. She gave it a little more time. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Watchman Anderson, and I've been a member here at Saint Mark's. Gosh, I've been here 12 years. Had the privilege of being able to be a part of this faith community. Unlike Keith, I did not prepare any kind of information about myself. What I will share is I'm one of 5 children, and one of 4 of my mom's kids. My mom's a member of this community as well. And for me, I was first generation everything. So the only daughter of a number of sons. And I was oftentimes told in my upbringing, you're going to have to work twice as hard. You're going to have to, things are not going to be fair. And it's kind of like, deal with it, versus, and what can you do about it? I'm an educator. I'm an educator by profession. I learned very early from my mom, get your education and everything else should come after that. So I followed the rules. I did everything the way that I was supposed to. And still bad stuff happens. And bad stuff happens because of my identity as a woman. More bad stuff happens because of my identity as a Black person. I have spent most of my professional career as an educator, both as an education administrator in higher education, so at colleges and universities, but I've also spent a lot of that time doing a lot of diversity and inclusion education in college classrooms. Sorry, that's my phone breathing. As Razor boys, I like Star Wars. And a lot of that work has been trying work. It's that reminder that I'm going to have to work twice as hard. So when I stand in front of a classroom of college students who, on most cases, are predominantly white, I'm in those situations where if I'm trying to convince them of the life experience of a community of marginalized population, I'm trying to sell something. Now, mind you, I may be trying to convince them the same thing that my white counterparts and colleagues are doing, but I have to work quadruple as hard, and I'm going to be questioned every single time. And in diversity inclusion, I don't take offense to that. It's that dynamic of you're going to have to work twice as hard, and it's not fair. So it's not fair that when I stand up in front of a class, it's the sweatiest I ever am, talking about something that I know deep in my bones. I know from research. I know from statistics. And yet, I am the most questioned individual when it comes to imparting that wisdom. Like, I'm not an expert in my own experience. And the reality is, as schooled or knowledgeable as we each are, we are the best expert of our own experience. I know the life that I've lived, I know the hardships that I've endured, and that they are not the same as my white colleagues, counterparts, my former ex-husband who is a white male. You know, those are realities that I live. I have 2 children, 2 daughters. They will live in that reality also, because though they share whiteness with their dad's side of the family, they are brown enough that they're not white enough. And so those are real realities. So when these things happen, it's interesting. My ex-husband used to talk, he also is an educator, and he used to often talk when people would raise the issue of diversity, that comment that I was one of those people that when I watched a TV show or saw any circumstance, I was always rooting for the Black person. Always rooting for the Black person. Because it is so greatly challenging, and people don't recognize it, because we're meant to be oblivious. You're taught to be oblivious of your privilege when you're white. You live in a world when you walk into a room, when you walk into an interview, the likelihood that everybody is going to look like you aesthetically is high, significantly high. The likelihood when you get pulled over by a police officer, it's high that they're going to look like you. God, if I got pulled over by Roger, hey, a good day, even if I got a ticket. But the reality is, I live in an alternate universe than most white friends, family, colleagues live in. And so for somebody to challenge that my pain, that my reality, that my fear for my kids, for my brothers, for my mom, for my friends, for my, you know, that that's not real, that that's based in some alternate or negative perspective is painful to hear. But that's the life that I live in. With all of the happenings around predominantly men, but some women of color, being injured and killed in the past year at the hands of law enforcement or in situations with law enforcement, it has led me to make decisions as to, do I remain silent because I know a lot, but, you know, who are you trying to convince? You know, he said, you know, I'm trying to impart over 50 years of wisdom in a matter of 4 minutes. To unlearn something that you have known or been told, the lies that you've been told. I used to talk to my classrooms about them, like, the lies that our parents told us, because they didn't know any different. Somebody told them lies, and they're imparting that wisdom. The lies that your teachers told you, because they don't know any different. They know only their experience. They know their own text, they know their own knowledge, and so they impart it. And those are things that we take with us, and we put it in our backpack and we carry it around. And we don't share that stuff out of malice or unkindness, but it is from a space of lack of knowledge. If I say ignorance, it becomes unkind, but it's a lack of knowledge about the other. And you have to work hard to have knowledge of the other. It's not an easy thing. It requires work. And so the reality of these situations is I spend many of my days combating craziness. Sometimes that craziness is from those of us who are of color, who have been taught the same lies that everybody else has been told. And we learn this ethos of there's got to be a perfectly legitimate reason for why that would happen. When in fact, there could be no legitimate reason for why that happened. Having spent my life doing crisis management at a number of large colleges and universities over the past 20 years, I have worked with law enforcement virtually every day. I have worked with some excellent police officers, state, local, even worked with federal officers. The majority of them have been white, and the majority of them have been good. There are many who, for lack of knowledge or training or education or a lack of readiness to enter into the space of fear, make mistakes. We're all fallible individuals. The challenge is, we do live in a time where media elevates a lot of elements. I don't think we live in a time where media elevates every circumstance that a Caucasian person has a combative circumstance with a police officer and what the outcome is. I do think that race relations in this nation have been the root of all ill in this country that has not been effectively addressed or talked about because people don't like to be uncomfortable. I'll oftentimes say to people, I have to share my pain for other people's learning. I have to enter into places of discomfort for other people's awareness. I choose that. It's my choice. It shouldn't be an expectation for members of communities who are historically marginalized to put their pain and their experience on display for other people, for other people's desire to figure out what do we need to do. When there's a loss in your life, the first thing that you do is grieve. Acknowledge and recognize the grief. When you have somebody that experiences a loss, your presence is important. Not, what are we going to do, or how do we get you a new husband, or a new daughter, or a new wife, or a new child. Enter into the grief and understanding. The work comes thereafter. But enter into it knowing that that person is an expert in their experience. And don't question that they have no knowledge of what they're talking about or what they're experiencing. It is their lived reality. It is my lived fear on a regular basis when I get into my car, knowing that the potential that somebody's going to pull me over is far higher than my white friends and colleagues. I don't get mad about it. It's this reality that I live in, unfair though it may be.
So now we're going to spend just a few minutes at our own table. If people are comfortable in telling any of their own stories,